Hey guys, welcome back. Been a while. Finally getting around to doing this Ranger engine swap. I know I talked about it in the last video, which is I'll put a listing up there at the end of the video. You can go back and hear me ramble and rant about that one, but things are actually progressing for once, which is weird because I'm a one-man show and there's no extra hands around to help me. Luckily, yesterday my dad was actually able to come out for a little bit and help me get this engine out. Like I said, I'm working in the driveway, no overhead, no above head anything, so out in the elements. So, granted, today's a nice warm day, so not an issue today, but could be in the future. Anyway, I'm gonna show you this. I would have showed you some footage of me pulling the engine and stuff out, but it was just one of those. I just started doing it, and next thing you know, I'm calling my dad up, said, "Hey, can you give me a hand here? Need a few minutes here." You can see a little bit sneak peek there in back with the hood off. Anyway, I said, "Need a little help here. You think you can give me a hand for about, I don't know, a couple hours or so?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll come out there in a little bit." And next thing you know, we're pulling an engine out. So this here is my 1988 Ford Ranger that I call the Little Bohemian. It says it on the side here. Originally a 2.3 liter, since I've owned it anyway. Originally this truck from the factory came with the 2 liter. There was a reason why it was carbureted. And if some of you are wondering why I'm going the route I'm going and not fuel injected, 1, cheaper, 2, I know more about it. Fuel injected stuff, yes, you can probably kind of do a plug and play sort of thing, pull an engine out of a Mustang, F-150, Explorer, whatever, and plop it right into one of these. And most people probably wouldn't bat an eye at it, but I want to kind of do things that make sense to me. So if something goes wrong with it, I'm not having to go find a 90s ECM for a Mustang or Explorer or a F-150 or whatever, all the way up till 2000s or whenever they quit using the 5-liter roller cam engines, which this will have in it soon. Anyway, but yes, you see here, empty engine bay, transmission's pulled, engine sitting here on the engine hoist. I'll show you that here in a little bit. The one thing I did end up having to do, which I was looking at the original motor mounts that came with this truck. Those aren't the original. Those are actually out of I want to say 93 and up Ranger pickup, like when the 4 liters came out. I can't remember the exact years when the 4 liters came out. From what I've talked to and done some back and forth with people on Facebook with Ranger groups and things like that I follow and interact with, I've been asking a lot of questions. A lot of them probably pretty dumb questions, because people that have done it are either really good at what they do, just have very natural talent, good natural mechanical talents, and they just understand it. It just clicks with them. For me, a little bit more of a struggle. I always kind of learn things secondhand, and always like to have the facts and the baseline laid down before I do anything. I'm still running into some issues. I'll bring one up here probably at some point during the video. I'll tell you what's going on. My next biggest hurdle I gotta get through, I should say. It's a transmission issue that I overlooked, and there's a reason why people say the transmission I chose is not the best one to use for this swap. So anyway, let's dive into this and I'll tell you what's going on. Anyway, so as I was saying, this originally had since I had it, had a 2.3 liter carbureted engine in it. Originally came with a 2 liter carbureted motor, which was factory in these trucks. This is a 1988 Ford Ranger. I believe that was the last year for a carbureted engine offered, and the 2 liter was the last engine that Rangers had. That was a carbureted engine, and then after they got rid of the 2 liter, everything was fuel injected. I believe the 2 liter was discontinued after 88. I'm not entirely sure, but I believe that's the last year they had it. 2 liter was extremely underpowered, and as compared to the 2.3, which I know some of you are laughing, 2.3s were underpowered too. You aren't wrong. There's a reason why we're going the route I'm going now. Anyway, I'll flip you around here. We'll show you engine sitting on the engine hoist. Got her hanging up here, and there's the engine hanging off of the chain here with the transmission attached. That's going to be a next issue that I've run into. Anyway, well, we got here. This is doing this with the front camera, so a little bit hard to see. This is the engine out of a 1983 Ford Mustang, I was told. I bought it off of Facebook Marketplace, and I put it in this truck. This truck originally had a different 2.3 in it when I first swapped the motor out because the original engine was actually blown. This is the second motor it's had in it. This engine actually has a potential for somebody that would be willing to take on a 2.3 project truck. Maybe that person is me. I'm not entirely sure. This right now is just going to be sitting on a pallet until I find a use for it or decide to sell it. Or it could sit indefinitely, which is another possibility as well. This greasy, slimy, greasy mess is the Mazda 5-speed that they paired with a lot of Ranger pickups, I think all the way up until 2011, I believe. Was a very common transmission in these trucks. And they're pretty good transmissions, not really a lot of problems with them. I believe somewhere in the mid-80s is when they first came out. They had another 5-speed prior to it, which was kind of a problematic transmission. I had one in my, what was that, an 84 Bronco 2. The difference is, I can tell you, if you look at the shifter, this is straight. The Bronco 2s and the earlier Rangers kind of had a funky, like a zigzaggy kind of shifter. That's how you know the difference. At least that's, you know, just visibly without knowing what transmission you have. That's the first thing I've noticed. Okay, anyway, progressing on to the story here of this engine swap thing. I basically pulled out every single thing out of the drivetrain, drive shafts out of it. One thing I did run into, being an older truck, of course, things are going to be rusty. Yes, it's got a nice paint job on it, but this was never a frame-off restoration truck. This was just paint the body, put nice wheels and tires on it, do up the interior a little bit, and make it nice enough to take to car shows. But if you go underneath there, look around, yeah, it's greasy, grimy. It looks kind of like that transmission and engine assembly. The engine looks okay because it was painted at one point in time. I did not paint that engine. I did redo the valve cover at one point, but I had some problems with, obviously, paint bonding and ended up cracking due to heat and things like that, and looks kind of crappy now, but that was 5 years ago already. So, is what it is. Anyway, if you could see the rusty mess on the ground underneath there, that is one of the transmission crossmember bolts. It's seized in the bushing on the driver's side. I couldn't get it out. So, I was trying to pull this all out as one big unit because I wasn't going to use the transmission. Well, I can't use the transmission, rather. It's going to have a 5-speed out of an F-150. So, yes, it's going to be very similar, a Mazda 5-speed, but a little bit heavier duty, made for a small block engine, which that's what's going into this. The one side I was able to get off, as you can see, it's kind of laying there on the ground. That's the transmission mount, and that's going to have to come out. Well, not come out, but I'm going to have to slot the holes on the motor, or the transmission mounts, rather, for it to work properly, because they say the alignment slightly different, or the length slightly different, so I'm gonna have to move some stuff. Anyway, I'm gonna show you the oily, kind of rusty mess I got here for not rusty, but a crusty mess I got for a transmission. It comes out of a 95 F-150. Right now I've noticed two issues that I'm going to have to deal with. One isn't such a big deal, it's just more of an annoyance. This transmission, I'm not entirely sure how they run the speedometer off these transmissions. If it runs off the rear diffs on the F-150s or what. It does not have a speedometer drive on it, so there's no way to get a output speed for it. So unfortunately, the speedometer in my Ranger, that is a mechanical speedometer. It's got a gear like the old style stuff. So I will not have a speedometer. I'm thinking about how I'm going to set up like a GPS speedometer or something of that nature. Anyway, the transmission now, this one, it's pretty gross because it's been sitting in my carport and it's been here for almost a year now. Dealing with bird crap and all the other wonderful stuff that happens in here because birds like to nest up in the chain hoist and the lighting fixture I put in here. There's the hood off of the pickup sitting there in the corner. And wonderful motorcycle, and then the hood off of my Challenger. This is the original hood. That was the vinyl stripe that was peeling off. We were doing some testing before I put the shaker hood on my Challenger, but that's not the focus of this video. Anyway, transmission off of this 95 F-150. First issue, like I mentioned, speedometer problems. Next issue, which is a little bit bigger issue, and I'm a little bit uneasy about, I guess would be the best way to put it. The shifter location is very different from the Ranger. I will just show you just to kind of simplify things for you guys. Mind the bird crap and everything else because, well, like I said, it sits in a carport and it's kind of open to the elements. So, get my hand in the right place. Shifter location on this one. The Ranger shifter is way back here. The F-150 shifter is way up here. When I go to put it into the truck, it's going to be jammed right into the floor pan. So there will have to be some cutting and modifications to get it to fit. That isn't the big deal, though. The deal is going to be making sure the shifter doesn't hit the dash, because it's at least 8 inches farther forward than the Ranger transmission. I'll walk back over here quick and show you the Ranger transmission and the difference between the two. We'll get over here in a second. Alright, and I'll give you a closer look at this one. Ranger transmission, F-150 transmission shifter is about up here. There's about that much difference between the two. Now, I know some of you are going to say, well, why don't you just take that shifter off and put it on the other one? I would love to, but unfortunately, yes, they are both Mazda-based transmissions, but they made them in such a way that parts do not interchange. Ranger transmissions are smaller, and of course, I'm sure there's some configuration differences between the two. Don't get me wrong, there might be a few interchangeable parts because I'm sure as a global corporation, they probably do make things that do interchange. The tail housings look similar, so maybe those would interchange, but I'm not the guy to try that because I don't want to get myself into a bind and end up screwing stuff up. Mainly because I don't know exactly what models these transmissions are. I just was told that transmissions out of a 90s F-150 will work behind a 302, and it should fit into a Ranger relatively well. And there are better transmissions to find. People have told me if you could have found yourself like a 2000s F-150 with the V6, I guess that's one that will work in here, and the shifter's farther back like it is on that Ranger transmission. However, those trucks are, especially around my area, are few and far between because the motors in those trucks were not great engines. And a lot of those trucks ended up at the salvage yards several years ago and they are long gone. For some reason, the 90s F-150s kind of hung around. Well, I know why, because they obviously were decent trucks and they just hung in there. 2-wheel drive ones, they were pretty tough to kill because you didn't have kids out there tearing up dirt roads and driving through mud puddles and ponds with them and blowing them up. So those trucks hung around a lot more. I can say that for a fact because I used to own a 92 F-150, which had more or less the identical transmission I have sitting in the shed right there, or the carport right there. The thing I'm going to have to do next, and I guess I can show you, I'll walk into the inside of the truck, which right now I got a little carpet pulled out of it, which isn't much carpet. It was just basically a mat and a couple things. So here's the inside of the truck. I don't know if I ever showed it to you on camera before. There's your shifter hole there. Get you in a better angle here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Okay, there's the front of the shifter hole here. The shifter is about this much farther forward, and maybe more so if I wanted to center this hole up. It's going to have to come forward quite a bit. So I'm debating, this plate is designed to come out, but this has been in here since 1988, and it has probably become one with the floor. So, and this truck was quite rusty when I got it, so I have a feeling taking out those four, look like 8mm or 5/16 bolts, trying to get that out, I guarantee at least 3 of the 4 are probably going to snap off and they'll just end up with a headache. I'll probably still attempt to take them out, but what I'm probably going to end up doing is I'll take that whole piece out. I'll cut the hole bigger, and then just make myself a relocator shifter point for it. Anyway, the next issue I'm going to have is this dash panel right here. With it being that much farther forward, the shifter is going to be right here, and that's going to cause a problem. Now, the F-150 transmissions, the shifter's angled back quite a ways, and it might miss it, but I have a feeling up into, like, you shift into first, second, and fifth, or sorry, first, third, and fifth, I'll be smacking the dash. So, gonna have to come up with some sort of dog leg modification to the shifter. Might have to make a custom shifter for it. And, oh, something else I didn't mention, these 4-liter Ranger mounts, which these Rangers never had 4 liters in it. You could never get a first-gen Ranger with the 4-liter. The biggest motor they had offered at the time was a 2.9. They have the 2-liter, the 2.3, a couple of diesel variants, which I don't know the displacements off the top of my head. I think there's at least 2. There's a Mitsubishi, and I believe there's the Perkins options. I don't know how big they are, but anyway, the smallest gas engine was the 2-liter. The next biggest one was the 2.3. Then you went up to the 2.8, which was a German engineered motor. I had that actually in that 84 Bronco 2 that I had. They ran good, it just didn't have a lot of power. They were pretty doggy. But beside the point, then of course the 2.9 was the big engine, which you could get in these trucks. So they had a V6 option. Unfortunately, they never had the 3-liter. They never had the 4-liter. I'm not a big fan of Ranger V6 engines. I'll just say that right now. I've always liked the 2.3s better. I think they're just a better engine all around. I know some people might argue with me about that. I do like the 4-liter non-overhead cam engines. Those are decent motors. Not super fun to work on, though. The 4-liter single overhead cam engines make good power. And that's about all I got to say about them. Otherwise, I don't think they're a good engine. The 3-liters, in my opinion, are gutless wonders, and I don't even take a second look at them. I don't think they're great. 2.9s and the 2.9s had a lot of head problems, and I didn't care for them. 2.8s, like I said, were underpowered. 2.3s, though, have a soft spot for them. My 83 Ranger, which this truck has some parts off of, my first truck I had, actually the first vehicle I learned to drive in, actually the doors are off of that truck. So a lot of nostalgia. This truck has a soft spot in my heart for. So won't be getting rid of this truck anytime soon unless something unfortunately happens to it. Hope not. I really don't, because that happened to my other one. Which is why this truck exists, actually. Well, at least why I own it. The truck would probably exist anyway, but I'm the one that owns it. So was willing to drive all the way up to North Platte for it, which is a 4-hour drive one way and 4-hour drive back. And like I said, the engine was blown in this truck. This truck was not painted like this when I got it. It was black, but it was rough. And there's a few videos back. You'll just have to look through. I don't have a ton of videos. When I'm going through I believe it's when I was testing out the Flip Cam app, which I don't use anymore because it has problems with freezing. So unfortunately, unless they've updated it, I haven't been using it for quite a while. So, but it did work nice because I could go back and forth between front and rear camera, which was kind of nice. But unfortunately, it wasn't working well for me. And I'm off a cell phone. I don't have a fancy camera or anything like that. This is just my cell phone recording. So, like I said, I'm always doing this on a budget. I don't know how invested I want to be into YouTube videos. This is just more for, I get bored and I like to make videos, and I know some of you enjoy watching stuff. So I figured why not share some things with you. This is probably one of the bigger projects you will probably see me do. The other thing, another update, since I'm on that rant, you'll notice there is no green John Deere 300 riding mower here anymore. I sold the mower, and I had mentioned it in the previous video that mower was going down the road. Unfortunately, it was just a little too finicky for me to deal with. I just personally didn't think it was a good investment. I know there's a lot of diehards out there that would disagree with me and say that mower was worth way more than you gave it credit for. Anyway, I'm not trying to, well, look at me, I'm so cool. I'm wheeling and dealing things. No, full truth, full honesty, I paid $320 for that mower. I personally thought it was too much. But granted, I get stuff like that red riding mower over there, which I did videos on, which I was having issues with engine and stuff. That mower now runs and mows. I found out it was a wiring problem, got it fixed. It will run and mow like it's supposed to. Anyway, the John Deere mower kept having problems with it. It was always having, you could mow with it, get about 20% of the yard done, and the thing would die. And it didn't like to restart. And whether it was a fuel tank issue or a fuel pump issue, rather, or it could have been both. Older mower, and it's one of those big tanks that you're sitting on top of the tank, basically, underneath the seat pan. I'm guessing it got dirt or something into it, and it would suck stuff into there, and the engine would die because of it. And I could never get it to run perfect. Like, it would run great sometimes, and other times it was just sitting there, and I could never get it to run right. Tried all the different things, points, ignition, carburetor, just everything I could think of without pulling the motor apart, because I am not an engine builder. I do not rebuild engines. I know enough to take one apart, put it back together, but I'm not a machinist. I don't do any of that sort of thing. So I am a mechanic. I do mechanical work by day, and the shop I work at, we don't deal with like engine swaps and transmission stuff. That's not really where our focus is. We're kind of your simpler jobs like brake jobs, leaking radiators, that sort of thing. We don't get into heavy lifting, per se. Like we won't swap out a differential. We'll do like pinion seals, we'll drain the fluid on your diffs, that sort of thing. Axle seal, that sort of stuff. But we really don't get into heavy lifting stuff. So if it requires a cherry picker or, excessive amounts of removal, normally we aren't going to mess with it. We won't do head gaskets. The shop's a small shop. It's a 3-bay shop technically, though it's two next to there's one bay on each side, and then there's two connected to each other, one front to back basically. So you got a 2 deep stall on one side and then a 1 deep stall on the other side. And most of the time that back stall is now full of tires and stuff for customers' vehicles and stuff, so we really just don't get into that stuff anymore. So just don't have the time and just don't have the manpower there to do all that stuff, so we just kind of shied away from it. It's not that we couldn't do it, it's just that it's a little bit more than we're able to handle right now. So anyway, back full circle to the Ranger. I said, sold the mower off. I said, I'm getting on tangents. I'll finish telling you what happened to the mower. Guy came all the way from Sioux City, Iowa to come get it. So that's like 2-hour drive from here. And came here with a nice trailer and stuff, and he was all just tickled to buy the mower. I sold the mower for $500. Now, before you get on my case about why'd you sell it for so much, you said you paid $320 for this mower. Correct. However, the mower had a rusted out deck. It ran terrible. I couldn't even drive it hardly. It didn't like to start. I addressed a ton of problems on that mower before that. It was reliable enough that you could mow with it fairly confidently by the time I got rid of it. Now, like I said, it did have some problems, and it was just a little bit more. It was a temperamental old mower, and I just really didn't want to put any more money into it. It was just better off in somebody else's hands. Anyway, the guy that I sold it to, very nice younger guy, super ecstatic about it. I said, hey, I'm guessing he has some sort of lawn care business or of some kind, judging by the vehicle and the trailer he brought. He was, oh yeah, I'll have it painted up, I'll have it fixed up, and I've always wanted one of these mowers, and just smiling, grinning from ear to ear, all happy about it. And I said, all right, the only way I'm selling you this mower is you get the old deck. It had that modified Cub Cadet deck that I put on it that was functioning and working like it should, except there's a bit of a belt misalignment problem that could have been corrected, but he wasn't worried about that. He said, I just want to use this thing as a work rig. I'm going to pull stuff with it, and that's really all I plan to use it for. And I said, that'll probably be a great mower for you then. The other thing is, it came with a whole case, 12 quarts of Type F transmission fluid, a brand new filter, and a host of parts for it. I just had all these extra parts laying around that I ended up not using. A new fuel pump, I can't even remember all the stuff. It was just a bunch of random things. I said, here, take all this. This is going with it. I easily gave him back what I put into it. So he wasn't getting ripped off. So if you feel that way, I'm sorry, but $500 I thought was a fair deal. Anyway, come back full circle, you know, trying to tie things together on this channel. Why your project disappearing, or how come I don't see that anymore? Some of you might ask. That's because went a different direction, or lost interest, or became too much for a project for me, which unfortunately that was the case for that John Deere 300 mower. Like I said, I'm not a John Deere guy, never have been. Nothing against them, they just really never appealed to me. That mower just happened to be at the right price point, I thought, at the time, and I thought it would have been a better mower than it ended up being. So that's why that one, unfortunately, ended up going down the road, because it was just a little bit more than I wanted to work with. So there's all the remnants of all the parts I pulled out of the Ranger pickup. Drive shafts hanging up against the wall here. Got the little tiny dinky radiator, which I can't believe they put in a Ranger pickup. If you want to see how tiny that is, that's like 3/4 of an inch. And that never got hot. That truck never got hot. Didn't even think about it. The truck, I think, was running consistently maybe 190 degrees. This is about as hot as that truck would ever get. And that's flat out going 70 down the highway. And it's, that's working that motor. That motor is revving at that 70 miles an hour, which was also part of the reason I decided to swap out the 4-cylinder. The 4-cylinder itself, it does run. It was having some carburetor issues, I believe. Probably got some bad gas run through it, and it likes to spit and sputter. Doesn't like to stay running when it's cold. It just needs to be gone through, and quite frankly, it's a funky 2-barrel Holly Weber carburetor.